The readings give us a great insight. A centurion. Sometimes we need to unpack what that means. A man, a soldier, who commanded hundreds of other soldiers. A centurion of the Roman Empire, the foreign invasion force surrounding and in control of Jerusalem. And yet, what did he recognize? He recognized who he was. I would think from this centurion, we can discover humility. For humility is the knowledge of feeling and knowing oneself as one is. The centurion recognized his humility, that he couldn't cure his servant. The centurion recognized he needed Jesus in his life. But more than that, the centurion recognized his own status, but because he needed Jesus in his life, he went from humility to what I would call perfect humility, for he wanted to meet the unfathomable love of God, who is the ground of our being. When we think of the centurion, what would it have meant for a foreign occupying officer to go to this itinerant preacher, this centurion full of power, backing of the full Roman army, full Roman government? He recognized he needed Jesus in his life. As we begin our Advent season, maybe we need to look at our own humility, our own knowledge and feeling as one is. And how do we know that? When we take a good stock of ourselves, when we look in our examine maybe of conscience, and we discover, I am sure, we need God in our lives. We need Jesus in our lives. That longing of the Advent season is to have Jesus in our life in a new way. When we think of Advent season, prayer, preparation, waiting, longing, all of it comes down to is that desire for Christ in a new way. Prayer sometimes is called the long, loving look at the real. Prayer is the long, loving look at the real. And what is the real but Jesus the Christ? What is the real but being Jesus' disciple? What is the real but recognizing we need God in our lives? As we begin the Advent season, maybe we need to look at humility. Sometimes this fake humility. Way back when in seminary training, we were actually told not to walk down the center of the corridors, but to hug the wall. And that was meant to be a type of humility. We never did that. That made no sense. But good humility is recognizing who and what we are. Who and what we are is created in God's image and likeness. Who and what we are is a child of God. Who and what we are as sinners struggling to be saints. This Advent season, maybe we can look to the centurion who had a type of humility that maybe we need to copy. That knowledge and feeling of oneself as one is, but more importantly, what the centurion had, perfect humility for his desire of meeting the love of God, who is the ground of his being and our being. As we continue our Advent journey, let us ask for that grace for perfect humility of meeting the love of God as the ground of our being, and seeing in our Advent prayer that long, loving look at the real of being God's love, Christ in our world, us recognizing and knowing that after all of our posturing, we need God in our lives. In humility, let us turn to Jesus once again and invite Jesus into our hearts and into our homes as we say, now, at every time before we receive communion, the centurion's line. Lord, I am not worthy to have you enter under my roof. Only say the word, and I will be healed.